in the heart of the Emirates. Fortune is a language everyone understands. It can build skyscrapers that scrape the heavens, buy absolute privacy, and command unshakable power. But there is one thing it can never purchase: redemption. This is a story about the price of a secret, and the moment a hidden life violently collides with a perfect public one. It's a tale that asks a haunting question: when you have everything to lose, how far would you go to protect the lie you've built? Welcome, everyone, to a story that shook the foundations of power in the UAE. To all of you joining from across the globe, whether you're in London, Mumbai, Sydney, or anywhere else, I want you to take a moment. Look at this city of dreams. And remember that behind the glittering facades, human nature, in all its complexity and darkness, still reigns. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always fascinated by the reach of this community. Our story begins not with a crime, but with a legacy in the making. Khalid Al-Tamimi was not born into boundless wealth. He was born into something perhaps more valuable, a name that stood for honor. His father was a respected diplomat in the early days of the Federation, a man who taught him that a reputation, once tarnished, can never be fully restored. His mother, from a prominent Emirati family of educators, instilled in him a relentless discipline and a deep, abiding faith. Their home in Al Ain was filled with the scent of oud, the sound of prayer, and ambitions that stretched far beyond their modest means. As a young man, Khalid was different. While his peers were fascinated by fast cars and falconry, he was consumed by the blueprints of skyscrapers and the intricate dance of the global markets. He saw a future in the desert sands that others couldn't imagine. At 18, he convinced his father to send him abroad. He chose the University of Cambridge, where he immersed himself in economics and international business. He returned to Abu Dhabi at 24. Not just with a degree, but with a vision, a sharp suit, and a hunger that would not be satiated. The year was 2005. The UAE was a nation in hyperdrive. Cranes were permanent features on the skyline, and capital flowed in from every corner of the globe. Khalid took a risk that would define his life. He invested every dirham he had, and many he borrowed, into a tract of land on the outskirts of the city. When plans for a new financial district were announced, that land's value quintupled. He didn't celebrate, he reinvested. Within a decade, Khalid Al-Tamimi was a titan. His portfolio spanned luxury resorts on Saadiyat Island, commercial towers on Al Maraya Island, and strategic holdings from Dubai to Ras Al Khaimah. His name became synonymous with success and, just as importantly, with integrity. He built his public image as carefully as he built his empire. He married Fatima, a woman from an esteemed family, in a wedding that was the social event of the season. She was elegant, poised, and deeply traditional, the perfect partner for a man on his trajectory. They had 2 children, a bright, ambitious son named Faisal, and a gentle, artistic daughter named Layla. Publicly, Khalid was a pillar of the community. He was seen at Friday prayers. His charitable foundation funded schools and hospitals, and he gave keynote speeches at international economic forums. To the outside world, Khalid Al-Tamimi was the embodiment of the modern Emirati dream, faithful, familial, and fantastically successful. But no one looks too closely at a monument, for fear of seeing the cracks. No one questioned the late nights at the office that grew more frequent, or the business trips to Zurich and Singapore that seemed to last just a day too long. And no one dared to ask why his most trusted lieutenant, a woman named Soraya Hassan, was always at his side, her loyalty seeming to transcend the professional. When you sit at the pinnacle of success, people admire you from a distance. They rarely dare to look closer. Have you ever known someone whose life seemed utterly perfect from the outside? A family, a career, a reputation that appeared unassailable? Leave a comment if you know that the most polished surfaces often hide the deepest flaws. For Khalid, those flaws were not just cracks, they were fault lines, and the earthquake was coming. Soraya Hassan arrived in Abu Dhabi at 26 with a single suitcase, a master's degree from the American University of Sharjah, and a drive that could power a city. Of Syrian and Jordanian heritage, she had grown up between worlds, learning that survival depended on intellect, adaptability, and the ability to read people better than they could read you. Fluent in Arabic, English, and French, Soraya moved through international circles with an effortless grace. She was sharp, sophisticated, and hungry for the kind of life that Abu Dhabi promised, a place where ambition was rewarded and the past could be left behind. In 2016, Khalid's empire was expanding faster than he could manage. His executive assistant was drowning in the complexities of multinational acquisitions, sensitive investor negotiations, and a travel schedule that would exhaust a head of state. He needed someone exceptional. Soraya's CV landed on his desk, and within minutes of a single interview, he knew. She didn't just manage his schedule, she anticipated his needs. She didn't just book flights, she orchestrated entire itineraries across 3 continents. When Khalid traveled, Soraya was there, one step ahead, ensuring every meeting, every handshake was flawless. Respect, however, has a way of transforming when 2 people spend countless hours side by side in pressurized environments. Late-night strategy sessions in the office became working dinners at 5-star hotels. Those dinners became private meetings in his penthouse, away from prying eyes. Their conversations drifted from profit margins and market shares to personal histories, private regrets, and dreams they had never shared with anyone else. The staff began to notice. The way her hand would linger on his arm during a presentation. The way his eyes would follow her across the room. The private jokes that no one else understood. "It's happening, isn't it?" one executive whispered to another in the break room. "Between him and Soraya?" "Of course it is," the other replied. "But you won't hear me say a word. Not when your bonus depends on his signature." What began as professional admiration spiraled into a dangerous dependency. Khalid found himself texting her late at night, not about work, but just to talk. Soraya caught herself replaying their conversations, analyzing every glance. The line between boss and confidant didn't just blur, it was erased. They crossed it one night in his penthouse after closing a monumental deal. Champagne, shared laughter, a moment of weakness that became a pattern they couldn't break. For over 2 years, they maintained the affair. 2 years of stolen moments, carefully constructed alibis, and the intoxicating, perilous thrill of a secret lived in plain sight. Have you ever witnessed a workplace relationship that crossed a line? What did you do? The comments are open, and your perspectives are always valuable. But neither Khalid nor Soraya knew that their forbidden connection was a ticking time bomb. And the fuse was lit not by a jealous spouse or a nosy colleague, but by a silent, biological betrayal. It started with a profound fatigue. Khalid returned from a high-stakes investment summit in Geneva in late April, blaming his exhaustion on jet lag and back-to-back negotiations. He'd been pushing hard. Securing a $500 million partnership required immense focus. He assumed rest would fix it. Rest did not fix it. Within days, the fatigue deepened. He began waking in the night, his custom-made Egyptian cotton sheets soaked with sweat. High fevers came in waves, leaving him weak and disoriented. Fatima grew concerned. "Habibi, you must see a doctor," she insisted. Khalid waved her off. "It's just stress. I'll be fine." He was not fine. By the second week, a rash appeared on his torso, small, dark, angry-looking lesions that refused to heal. His weight dropped dramatically. The bespoke suits that once fit him perfectly now hung loosely from his frame. Colleagues commented, "Khalid, you look thin. Is everything all right?" He forced a smile. Just cutting back on carbs. You know how it is. But internally, a cold panic was setting in. Finally, he called Dr. Abbas, a trusted specialist at Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi. The appointment was discreet, scheduled after hours, with no assistance, no paper trail. Khalid arrived wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, paranoid that someone might recognize him. Dr. Abbas was direct. "We need to run a full panel of tests," he said, his tone grave. "Comprehensive blood work, screens for various infections. Some of your symptoms are concerning." Khalid's heart sank. The unspoken word hung in the air, HIV. In the conservative social fabric of the UAE. Such a diagnosis was not just a health issue, it was a social death sentence. If it leaked, his empire would crumble. Business partners would retreat. His family would be shamed. "No one can know," Khalid stated, his voice firm. "Absolutely no one." Dr. Abbas nodded. "Doctor-patient confidentiality. You have my word." The wait for the results was a special kind of torture. 3 days felt like 3 months. Khalid avoided Fatima's questions, snapped at his children, and canceled a high-profile charity gala. Soraya texted him repeatedly. "Where are you? Is everything okay?" He ignored her. When Dr. Abbas called him back to the clinic, Khalid knew from the man's expression that the news was catastrophic. "You've tested positive for a serious sexually transmitted infection," the doctor said carefully. "It's treatable, but the complications are severe given how advanced it is. You'll need an aggressive treatment regimen immediately." Khalid's world tilted on its axis. "How? I don't understand." "It's transmitted through intimate contact," Dr. Abbas explained. "Based on the progression, you were infected within the last 6 to 8 months. 6 months? Khalid's mind raced. He had been faithful to Fatima for years. Until Soraya. But Soraya was clean. She had to be. They had been careful. "Is there anyone else who should be tested?" Dr. Abbas asked gently. Khalid's throat tightened. "My wife." Fatima tested negative. The relief was brief, instantly replaced by a darker, more terrifying understanding. There was only one other person. Soraya. A cold, hard rage began to replace the shock. She had done this. She had infected him. She had risked his health, his life, his family, and said nothing. How long had she known? Did she even know? The questions burned in his mind like a fever. Have you ever had to confront someone over a life-altering secret they kept from you? The betrayal cuts deeper than any lie. Share your thoughts below. But what Khalid was about to discover would make the infection seem like the least of his problems. Because confronting Soraya would unleash a chain of events that would shock a nation. Khalid did not summon Soraya to the office. It was too exposed. Instead, he sent a terse message. Urgent meeting regarding the Hong Kong portfolio. The Al Bateen Villa. 9 p.m. Come alone. Soraya didn't question it. They had used the secluded Al Bateen Villa before. It was their sanctuary, a place of high walls and silence. But this night would be different. When she arrived, Khalid opened the door himself. No staff, no security. Just him, standing in the doorway with a look she had never seen before, cold, detached, and utterly furious. "Khalid?" she said cautiously, stepping inside. "Is everything all right?" He didn't answer immediately. He simply closed the door, the bolt sliding home with a definitive thud, and walked into the grand living room. She followed, her heels clicking on the polished marble. The silence was heavy, oppressive. Finally, he turned to face her. "You infected me, Soraya." The air left her lungs. "What?" The doctors confirmed it. A serious STI. Severe complications. I've been sick for weeks. His voice was dangerously quiet. And it came from you. Soraya's face went pale. No. That's impossible. I'm clean. Don't lie to me. His voice cracked like a whip, the rage he'd been containing finally breaking through. My wife tested negative. There is no one else. It was you. Tears welled in Soraya's eyes. Khalid, I swear to you, I didn't know. I had no idea. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. How could you not know? He seethed. Who else have you been with? Silence. Soraya, answer me. Her voice was a broken whisper. London. What? There was someone. In London. A conference last fall. You couldn't make it. I met someone. It was one night. I didn't think. You didn't think? Khalid's fury exploded. You didn't think to tell me? You didn't think that sleeping with someone else while you were with me mattered? It meant nothing. She shot back, her own anger rising to meet his. It was one night, and I came back to you. And you brought a disease back to me. His voice boomed through the villa. Do you understand what you've done? My health, my reputation, my family, everything is at risk because of you. Because of me? Soraya's voice turned shrill. You want to talk about risk? You're the one who cheated on your wife. You're the one who built this lie. Don't stand there and act like I'm the only guilty one here. I never slept with anyone else while I was with you. Never. You were always with her, with Fatima. I was just the convenient distraction you used when it suited you. The words hit him with physical force. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The balance of power had irrevocably shifted. Soraya was no longer the subordinate, she was cornered, defensive, and desperate. I could destroy you, Khalid said, his voice low and dangerous. One phone call. You will never work in this city again. I will have you deported, blacklisted, and finished. Her eyes flashed. Then do it. But you will go down with me. If you were in Khalid's position, betrayed and enraged, how would you have handled that moment? The comment section is yours. But this was not an argument that would end with harsh words and a slammed door. What happened next would transform this villa from a secret haven into a gruesome crime scene. And the story would dominate headlines across the Gulf. It was nearly 11 p.m. when the confrontation escalated into catastrophe. The argument had been circling for almost 2 hours. Accusations, denials, blame hurled back and forth like weapons. But then Khalid said the words that sealed their fate. I am done protecting you, Soraya. Tomorrow, I am going to the authorities. I will tell them everything. The affair, the infection, all of it. You are finished in this city. Soraya's eyes widened in pure terror. You can't do that. Look at me. Khalid, please. Her voice broke. If you expose me, I lose everything. My visa, my career, my reputation. They will deport me. I will have nothing. You should have thought of that before you lied. Get out of my house. She didn't move. She couldn't. A paralyzing panic seized her. He was going to annihilate her. Years of work, everything she had built in the UAE gone. And for what? Because he couldn't face the consequences of his own choices. You're just as guilty as I am, she screamed. The difference is I have power. You do not. It was then that something inside her shattered. She stepped toward him, her fists clenched. You cannot ruin my life because you're angry. Khalid grabbed her wrist, his grip like iron. I said, get out. She tried to pull away. He tightened his hold, his fingers digging into her flesh. She felt the pressure, the control, the stark reminder that he was stronger, richer, more powerful. She had always been at his mercy. Not anymore. Her free hand flailed, searching for anything. It found the closest object, a heavy, steel letter opener from his desk, an ornate, sharpened piece of Damascus steel. Beautiful and lethal. She didn't think. She acted. The first strike caught him in the side of the neck. His eyes widened in shock. He released her wrist, stumbling back, his hand flying to the wound. Blood welled between his fingers. Soraya struck again. And again. Chest. Abdomen. The rage she had suppressed for years, the humiliation of being his secret, the fear of being disposable, it all erupted with every thrust. The blood splattered across the white furniture, the marble floors, her hands, her face. Neighbors, several villas away, would later report hearing muffled shouts and the sound of breaking furniture. Then silence. Khalid tried to retreat, his hand outstretched toward the door, gasping for air. But his legs gave way. He collapsed near the grand piano, his blood pooling beneath him. His eyes fixed on the crystal chandelier he had imported from Venice. He was dead before his hand touched the floor. Soraya stood frozen, the letter opener still clutched in her trembling hand. The reality of her actions crashed down on her like a physical wave. What have I done? Oh God, what have I done? The instinct for survival kicked in. She wiped down the surfaces, the door handles, the desk, the letter opener itself, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold the cloth. She stripped out of her blood-soaked clothes, shoved them into a bag, grabbed her passport, a stack of cash, and her phone from her purse. Security cameras from a villa down the street captured her white Range Rover speeding away at 3:14 a.m. Its taillights disappearing into the empty night. Morning came. Omar, Khalid's bodyguard of 12 years, arrived at 8 a.m. for the daily security briefing. The villa's front gate was slightly ajar. Strange. Khalid was meticulous about security. Mr. Al-Tamimi? Omar called out, stepping inside. Silence. He ventured further. That's when he saw it. First the blood. Then the body. His employer, the man he had protected, traveled with, and respected, lay lifeless on the floor in a dark, congealing pool. Omar's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. His voice shook as he spoke to the operator. I need the police. Al-Batin. My boss. He's dead. Someone has killed him. Can you imagine being the one to make that call? To be the one who discovers the unthinkable? How would you react? Within 30 minutes, the villa was swarming with Abu Dhabi police. Forensic investigators photographed the horrific blood spatter patterns, collected evidence, and began asking questions. The brutality of the scene was undeniable. Over a dozen stab wounds. The name that emerged from every initial interview with staff and colleagues was Soraya Hassan. Her absence was glaring. Her phone was off. Her apartment in Al Reem Island was empty. Her car, caught on traffic cameras leaving the Al-Batin area at 3:14 a.m., was nowhere to be found. She was the prime suspect. By noon, the news had leaked. The rumor mill in the UAE's business circles went into a frenzy. Text messages flew between CEOs, investors, and socialites. Have you heard about Khalid Al-Tamimi? My God, they say his business manager killed him. Soraya? I can't believe it. She seemed so professional. You never really know people. The police issued immediate border alerts. Airports, seaports, land crossings into Oman and Saudi Arabia, every exit point was monitored. Soraya's photograph was circulated to every immigration officer. Her passport was flagged. If she tried to leave the UAE, they would know. But she didn't try to leave. Tips began to flood in. A woman matching her description was seen at a cafe in Beirut. A false alarm. Another caller claimed she was holed up in a budget hotel in Fujairah under a fake name. Police stormed an empty room. Days passed. Frustration grew. How does someone vanish in a city saturated with cameras? Then, investigators got the break they needed. Financial analysts traced a money transfer, 60,000 AD sent from an exchange house in Abu Dhabi to a contact in the industrial zone of Muzaffar. The name used was fake, but the timing was perfect, 36 hours after the murder. Undercover officers staked out the address linked to the recipient, a narrow, low-rise apartment building, a world away from the gleaming towers Soraya was accustomed to. 6 days after Khalid's murder, they moved in. They found her on the 4th floor, hiding in a studio apartment barely larger than a storage closet. She had dyed her hair a cheap, flat black, though her natural brown roots were showing. She had lost weight. Deep shadows framed her hollow eyes. She looked like a ghost. When the officers knocked, she didn't run, didn't resist, didn't scream. She simply opened the door, her hands shaking, and whispered, "I knew you would find me." She was arrested without incident. As she was led away in handcuffs, neighbors watched from their doorways, whispering in Arabic, Urdu, and Tagalog. Another scandal, another life destroyed. They had caught her, but the story was far from over. What she told investigators next would trigger one of the most contentious legal debates in the recent history of the UAE. The interrogation room at the main headquarters was cold and sterile. Soraya sat across from 2 seasoned detectives, her hands cuffed, her eyes red raw. "He attacked me first," she said, her voice hollow. "I was defending myself." According to her statement, Khalid had become violent when she refused to accept his threats. He had grabbed her aggressively, shoved her against the desk, and she had feared for her life. The letter opener was within reach. She grabbed it in a blind panic. Everything after that was a blur. "I didn't mean to kill him," she whispered. "I just wanted him to stop." But the prosecution saw it differently. The chief prosecutor, a formidable man named Jalal al-Mansouri, presented forensic evidence that systematically dismantled Soraya's claim of self-defense. Bloodstain pattern analysis showed Khalid was backing away when most of the wounds were inflicted. The patterns indicated he was retreating from Soraya, not advancing toward her. The number of wounds, 17. The forensic pathologist testified that while the first strike could have been defensive, the subsequent 16 showed clear intent. Rage. A desire not just to stop him, but to end him. Soraya had no defensive wounds on her hands or arms, no scratches, no bruises from being grabbed or held down. If Khalid had truly been the aggressor, her body would have shown signs. And then there was the cleanup. Wiping down surfaces, changing clothes, taking cash, and fleeing at 3 a.m. These are not the actions of someone acting in self-defense, al-Mansouri argued. These are the actions of someone who knows they have committed murder. Soraya's defense attorney, a shrewd Lebanese lawyer named Elias Farah, fought back with a narrative of a crime of passion. "My client was cornered by a man of immense power," he argued. "He threatened to destroy her life, to have her deported, to ruin her name." She panicked. This was not premeditated murder. It was a tragic moment of desperation and survival. Outside the courtroom, public opinion was fiercely divided. Some saw Soraya as a victim, a woman exploited by a powerful, married man who discarded her when she became an inconvenience. Social media campaigns sprang up with hashtags demanding justice for women trapped in toxic power dynamics. Others saw her as a cold-blooded murderer. "She knew what she was doing," one commentator wrote. "She stabbed him 17 times and fled. That is not self-defense, that is an execution." In the UAE's conservative society, the affair itself was scandalous enough. But the murder was unforgivable. Every day of the trial, Fatima Al-Tamimi sat in the front row, veiled in black, silent and stoic. But her eyes, filled with a devastating cocktail of grief, rage, and the unbearable weight of betrayal, told a story her words never could. Her children, Faisal and Layla, were too young to attend. But they would grow up without a father because of what happened in that villa. After a month of gripping testimony, the judge read the verdict, guilty. The court determined the evidence did not support a claim of self-defense. Soraya Hassan was convicted of murder. The sentence was life imprisonment. She showed no emotion as the verdict was read. She simply closed her eyes and exhaled slowly, as if she had been holding her breath for months. The fallout was immediate. Khalid's company was quietly restructured, his name discreetly removed from buildings and promotional materials. Business partners distanced themselves from the scandal. Across the Emirates, conversations erupted. Mosques delivered Friday sermons about fidelity, integrity, and the consequences of hidden sin. Corporations held seminars on workplace boundaries. The case became a cautionary tale, whispered in boardrooms and living rooms alike. So, what do you think? Was Soraya defending herself, or did she commit cold-blooded murder? The evidence has been presented. The floor is now yours. Leave your verdict in the comments below. Has a scandal like this ever shaken your own community? I want to hear your stories. And once again, let me know where you're joining this discussion from today. But beyond the verdict, beyond the prison walls, a haunting question remains. 2 lives destroyed. A family shattered. A legacy reduced to whispers and warnings. Khalid Al-Tamimi believed his wealth and status made him untouchable. He thought he could live 2 lives, one public, one private, and never face the consequences. He was wrong. The truth about secrets is this: they do not stay buried. They fester. They grow. And eventually, they explode. The hidden affairs, the lies, the deceit, they compound in silence until the damage is irreversible. The most respected people can be wearing the most elaborate masks. A man admired in boardrooms and mosques was living a double life that ultimately cost him everything. So what can we learn from this tragedy? That integrity will always matter more than image. That every single choice carries a consequence. That power does not protect you from your own decisions. And that transparency and honesty, as difficult as they may be, are the only things that can truly save lives, families, and legacies. In a city of gold, the most valuable currency of all was the truth. And it was the one thing they could never afford. If you found this deep dive into a real-world tragedy compelling, if you believe in unraveling the complex stories behind the headlines, then you're in the right place. Help us bring more of these narratives to light by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell. There are countless more stories waiting to be told, and together, we can ensure they are heard. Stay aware, stay curious, and thank you for watching.